Alright, welcome to GRC33 Flash for Web. This is the Navigation from Scratch video series, and this is part 3. And we've already created our parent symbol, button symbol, and we've made 3 copies of it. And we've added some action script to it within the symbol itself to tell the text area to ignore the mouse so that we have complete button interactivity. And now what we're going to do is use ActionScript to change the title of these buttons. And first thing we need to do, though, if we're going to have any kind of interactivity, we need to have, any kind of communication between ActionScript and objects on the stage. Objects on the stage must have an instance name. So each of these 3 guys has no instance name, so let's give them some instance names. Let's call this home underscore btn. We'll call this one about underscore btn, and we'll call this one contact underscore btn. So we should have 3 instance names. Very often when you're finding you have an error in your action script and your site's not working, it's usually something to do with an instance name. Either it's spelled incorrectly or there's a capitalization issue. They must match between your instance name of your symbol and whatever your object is on the stage and your action script. Okay, so we've got these guys instantiated, so let's go ahead and see how we're going to change the title of each of these buttons. First thing I want to do is create a new layer for my action script, and I'm going to call this layer navigation. And you'll see why in just a little bit here. Alright, with my action script layer selected, I'm going to bring in my actions panel, and my first symbol is called home underscore btn, correct? And there is a text box inside that's btn title, and we want to access the text property of that text box. So again, there's a text box inside this symbol. This symbol is an instance name of home underscore btn, and within that symbol is this text box with an instance name of btn title. Now, because it's a text box, if we want to set the text property of a text box, we have to first call its instance name and then address the text property of that box. And so we set that equal to, this is going to be a string, so we're going to type the word home. It's a complete statement, so we end it with a semicolon. And let's test it. Control Enter. And sure enough, home. There it is. Let's do that with the rest of them. We can actually copy and paste Control C and Control V that line, because this information here is pretty much the same. It's not pretty much, it is the same. The only thing that's changing is the instance name of the button. This one was called about, and so we're going to change about to about us. This one's going to be contact, and we'll type here contact us. Let's try that and see what it looks like. Control Enter. There we go. Home, about us, and contact us. Now when I click, obviously nothing's happening because we don't have any action script set up to capture the event of the mouse click, and we have no destination content on top of that. So let's go ahead and move this guy out of the way. And we're going to now add the action script for these buttons so they can do some interactivity for us. As we've already learned in previous classes, you can set an event listener for each of the buttons that you've got on your stage, but a more accepted practice is to actually put those buttons within a particular symbol all themselves, and then just add an event listener for that symbol. So rather than having 3 event listeners, we just have 1 event listener. And that comes in handy when you have more than 3 buttons. If you have like 5 or 6 elements in your navigation, especially if you start doing drop downs and roll out and rollovers, it's very handy to be able to add just 1 event listener. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring these buttons here into a new symbol. And all I did was just drag select those 3 buttons, or 3 symbols, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose convert to symbol. And I'm going to call this navigation. Make sure it's the type movie clip. Okay, so now all 3 of these buttons are now within the symbol called navigation. And if I double click this, I can see all my 3 of my buttons are inside of navigation. I can double click one of these buttons to edit it, and now I'm in the symbol. I can even go further and double click on the that's locked, on the button itself, and now I'm editing the basic button. Now if I change the color of this in this one instance, make it a darker blue, notice that it changes in all the other buttons as well, because these are all instances, all 3 of these are instances of the parent master button. So if we edit that master button, the change is going to be propagated to all the other symbols that share the same basic, that are made from that library symbol. I'm going to go back to scene 1 now, and because we've changed that you'll see now that when you click, it's going to be a different blue than the upstate blue, because we've just changed the upstate blue. And of course our action script isn't working because we have an error, and that's because we've moved our symbols into another symbol, and so our action script is getting a little confused. So let's go back to the main timeline here. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to give an instance name to this symbol that contains all of our navigation buttons, and we're just going to give it an instance name of nav. So I selected the symbol, give it an instance name of nav, and now back on my actions script, let's wheel in the actions panel. And I need to add 1 more piece to this. Because these symbols are within the nav symbol, I have to address them through the nav symbol. So now it's nav home button title .text. And when I test that, we should get good results. Sure enough, everything's working as expected. And I want to put an event listener. Instead of having to do an event listener for all 3 of those buttons, now we just need to add an event listener for the navigation, and the event listener will bubble up through what other symbols are enclosed within that symbol. So I want to nav dot add event listener, and we're listening for a mouse event, specifically of the type click. And I'm going to call a function called goToFrame. Now goToFrame does not exist, I have to define it. And I'm going to do that right now, and I define a function by using the function declaration, declaring a function, goToFrame. And I have to set up a variable to receive the object that's coming from the event listener. And the object that's coming is this guy right here. It's a mouse event. And make sure that that's a semicolon, colon right there. Now this is not a complete statement, so we don't end with a semicolon. This is merely the head of the function. So following that, we create the body. There's my open curly brace. And I'm just going to do a trace action for right now. And what I want to look at is I want to trace out the object that's coming to this function. I want to look at the target, and I want to see the name of that target. That's a complete statement. I'll close that out. Okay, now here's where things get a little tricky. What we're doing is we're capturing the object E, and we want to see a property of that object called target. And within the target property, you have a couple different properties as well, subproperties of this property. One of them is name. And what name does is it gives you the instance name of that target. So whatever's been clicked up here to actuate the event listener, that instance name is what's going to show up here. So let's look and see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and Control Enter and test this. And I'm going to click on one of these buttons here. Let's just try home. And notice it gives me the instance 1 as my name. Here's instance 2 and instance 3. Now whenever you see an instance name with just instance and then a number, you know that Flash has identified that as not having an instance name, however it needs one. So Flash automatically assigns one so it can control how it interacts with ActionScript. Now, we never want to rely on Flash's automatic assignment of instance names. If we're going to be interacting with something, we want to give it a deliberate instance name, because Flash may decide to reorder things for us if we add new objects on the stage. So we never want to through ActionScript call anything instance 1, instance 2, or instance 3. The reason it's showing that is, remember that within our symbol we have several different layers of objects. Move this out of the way first. Our navigation, and then our symbols themselves, and then within those symbols are the buttons. Now the buttons do not have an instance name. This is what's being automatically assigned instance 1, instance 2, and instance 3. Now what we want to be able to do is through ActionScript is to delineate what button has been clicked. However, if we give this button an instance name, let's say home, it's going to be home in all of the other buttons that are sharing this parent symbol. So what we need to do is just leave it alone, and through ActionScript grab the instance name of this button of this symbol right here, which does have an instance name. Now in Flash, when you have embedded symbols like this, symbols within symbols, you have what's called a parent-child relationship. So this is kind of like the baby of navigation. And so if we want to access the parent of the baby, we have to include the name parent within our dot syntax when we're trying to find the target name. This is the actual thing that's being clicked, is this basic button. But because it doesn't have a symbol, it's going to return instance 1, instance 2, instance 3. But we can know what the parent of this clicked button is and get the instance name from that. So if we go back here to drag in our ActionScript, all I need to do is add the word parent after target. So what's happening is here we're accessing the target property of what's been clicked. Now what's been clicked is that button that does not have an instance name. And so here we're saying, okay, there's the button's been clicked, now give me the parent object, which is the symbol that contains the button, and that has an instance name, and give me the instance name of that. So now when we test our movie, we're going to get different results over here. Home button, about button, and contact button. And all we've done is add that parent keyword in there. And again, where it's blue on my screen, it should be blue on yours as well in your ActionScript. The blue means this is a protected keyword. The green means it is a string. And black is usually something of your own design. Okay, so now that we're able to accurately trace and retrieve the instance name, now we can move on to the next part, which is where we're able to make these buttons actually do something or go somewhere. So that concludes this lesson. Thank you very much.